Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
You'd like him if he makes dog.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Zazubar and Milan Jeftik, 1992. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello!
Greetings, all ye unholy bastards of the second something Lovecraftian something or other.
Up top is his own deity.
I did. I'm sorry. Okay, let me start again. Greetings. No, I can make it better.
It's okay, Milan. Just don't hurt yourself. Just sit down. Ian, what are we discussing today?
Well, today it was supposed to have been Milan's topic, but he kind of didn't get back to me in time, so Bill and I came up with something on the spot last week. And Bill forgot too, so it's lucky that I have, good memory here.
I had a vague notion of what we were discussing. No, I didn't have the complete picture.
Today we're going to have a debate about whether or not sci-fi works better in television or in movies.
Yep.
We are.
So,
yeah.
To get us started on this, I'm going to firmly plant myself in the television camp. Because you can name a lot of sci-fi properties, and the most iconic ones are television shows, with the major exception being Star Wars. Star Trek, Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica, Stargate. Stargate, yes, it's a movie and a television series, but it's definitely known as the television series more than the movie.
From what I understand, they're both I think they're unrelated. I mean, I know they're like the same premise, but I think they're unrelated continuity-wise.
Still, just what I'm saying, though.
Right.
The thing with that is, I mean, yes, sure, science fiction effects look so much better in large budget blockbusters, but the thing is, with large blockbusters, they kind of tend to, skimp on the whole intellectual intrigue and actual science fiction, kind of replacing it, making the whole thing into an action movie, but in space. And that kind of loses the charm of science fiction. And sure, at first I was going to say I was going to be in the movie camp, but then after thinking about it a little bit, yeah, I mean, sure, the visual effects aren't, as best that they can be on a large movie. But, Doctor Who sound effects, visual effects, sure, they might be a little bit, what's the right word I'm looking for?
Cheesy. They're like nacho cheesy, man.
Yeah, but they might
Not
be
so
a
much
little
anymore,
bit.
but yeah.
They can be a little bit, cheesy at times, a little bit, not cheap, but charming. But the thing is,
cheap is the correct word.
No,
Okay,
I agree with charming. That Charlie McDonald actually, I think, made the best point about Doctor Who special effects when he was talking about why he's a Whovian and why you should be too. And he said, now the special effects, particularly in the old episodes, are just adorable. And that might be a problem with some people, but for me, it's really not.
What Doctor Who does, and Ian and I will try our damnedest to not make this a Doctor Who video, but it probably will be anyway. What Doctor Who does that makes it so great is that it totally embraces the cheesiness of the effects and the cheesiness of the goddamn premise. It's a 900-year-old alien traveling around in a police box. That's ridiculous, but it's awesome. And it's all in how it's presented. If Doctor Who, and of course you can take Doctor Who seriously, but the very basic tone of it is it embraces that cheesiness, and you're just supposed to have fun with it. And It's
And actually, let me make this point. And in that way, it actually kind of tricks you. Let's say you kind of get into it thinking, oh, this is cool and fun and ha ha ha. And then all of a sudden, you get these epic emotional scenes from these characters that you've come to love over seasons, and suddenly you're like, why am I crying at the funny man in the box?
when he dies and he doesn't want to die.
Yeah. The thing is with that emotional connection, it's another thing. It's not just that. It's a Doctor Who emotional connection. It has some actual gut punch worthy emotional scenes to it. And yes, from what I've seen, it just every episode that I see makes me cry like a little girl, and that's manly. I don't care.
Not loving monsters.
But anyway, movie science fiction tends to actually skimp on the actual science fiction elements, at least the intelligent grown-up science fiction. It kind of resorts to, hey, look at me, we're doing very basic mainstream things that aren't exactly very interesting, but they're pretty to look at, and that's basically Star Wars. But
I would disagree with Star Wars.
I would disagree with
Star Wars is science fantasy more than science fiction, but
I
still.
suppose
they don't care about the technology. They're all about the scenario and the story and the characters. They don't care how a lightsaber works. It's just there to a certain effect, and it's there for majesty. It might as well be magic. It just has the guise of a science fiction film. It's basically Star Trek meets Lord of the Rings. That's basically what Star Wars is. And it uses that to tell a very fantastic story just in the guise of a science fiction film, but they don't go into the science of it. That's why it's fantasy before it's science fiction. But let's kind of talk about this quick, because again, as we just said, Star Wars doesn't go into the technology, but Star Trek and Doctor Who to a certain extent, although it kind of tries to keep it vague for good reasons.
Well, they don't give you the specifics, but they give you an explanation. I mean, the classic Futurama line that holds up still is, in Star Trek, they'd explain something with a metaphor to make it simple. And he goes, yes, it's like a balloon with too much air. And then when later in the episode, when shit starts going wrong, the engines are getting overflowed. It's like, oh no, it's like a balloon when something bad happens.
Right. Well, with Doctor Who, the thing that makes Doctor Who so brilliant is that it takes its cheap effect, and the best writer that uses this to good effect is Stephen Moffat, I think. He always takes a really simple effect and turns it into a crazy science fiction scenario. Case in point, the Weeping Angels. And then to also a different extent, the Empty Child as well, and the Nanites. Because we're going to tell you that this is what a Weeping Angel does, and this is what it does to do the effect that was scaring everyone that we didn't understand at the beginning of the episode. We're not going to tell you where they come from or how all that works. We're just going to tell you that it happens, and here's why it happens, not how that happens. If that makes any sense, which I'm sure it doesn't. And that's what makes it cool, but it's different from Star Trek, because Star Trek is a lot more grounded in reality than Doctor Who is. Like, we can see where Star Trek came from in terms of our modern day world. Like, we can see some of the extensions to the future technology. With Doctor Who, it's just, there's no way we'll ever be able to have this. We can't have a sonic screwdriver. It's just not possible.
Don't you spit on my dreams.
Ian, I gotta.
Go ahead,
Ian,
Lauren. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
It's okay. It's a possibility to make a sonic screwdriver. All you need is a lot of thermonuclear material. The guy who worked.
I'm trying to sound scientific now, because that doesn't make any sense.
No, you do. You actually do. The guy who works at my deli kind of sold me a lot for a reasonable amount of price, and it's really great. I mean, I got a thermonuclear reactor in my basement.
From the guy who works at your deli.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great guy. He's
Jebediah, put Milan back on the phone.
Yeah, seriously, this is Geeky Gentleman, not Jebediah Springsteen.
But gentlemen, I will drop the guise of Milan, Jeff. Yes, he's tied up right there. Don't try to get rid of the ball gag, you bastard. I'll get to you
Jebediah?
later. Yes.
We have access to your radio show, and we will cancel it if you don't put Milan back on the phone.
Oh, you're not the first person to dare to. How dare you? I will destroy you, Bill West.
No, Ian. Ian, you post everything on Ian's channel, so.
All right. Jebediah, here's the deal I'm going to make with you.
Yes.
Either put Milan back on the phone or no more time traveling. And that means no more Mammoth.
All right, then. All right, come here, you little bastard.
It's unfortunate that that's a joke only we get.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Sorry.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Milan,
Jebediah.
don't pretend like that's a position you've never been in before.
Okay, that's true, but still.
It can't be
Jeez.
that traumatic.
Well, it's not. It's just like, it's kind of rude. I mean, damn.
Anyway, so
No,
were you trying
like
to make a
something I find interesting about this though is most sci-fi films that work and that aren't, you know, very, very subdued sci-fi are almost all franchise pieces. You
That's
notice
true.
that there's very few standalone sci-fi films that are really successful.
The thing with that is, with movies, people so there are some films that are just standalone science fiction pieces, but as we all know, science fiction doesn't really sell all that well. And I don't know.
Let me just finish this point real quick.
Go ahead.
Because I think what that says, I'm not saying that there are no ones. I'm saying that the major successful sci-fi franchise or sci-fi films tend to be franchise pieces, and they tend to be set up that way. So I actually think that sci-fi kind of demands to have it taken out to a logical conclusion. I think it kind of demands sequels in a way.
Well, I think the
definitely.
purpose and the reason for that is so you get to explore more of this fantastic or this science fiction world. Because again, what science fiction most of the time sets out to do is reveal a truth about our world through this exaggerated one, like, you know, with Blade Runner and even Star Wars to a certain extent, and especially the 3 Star Trek films that kind of interweave into each other with you know, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home. They kind of like the Star Trek trilogy, if such a thing exists. And what the purpose of these franchises does is it says, here's a really out there world, but there's a lot about this world to explore that's really important to explore for our modern day society and for our modern day consciousness. So we have to do a bunch of films or a bunch of serials or whatever you want to call it in order to explore this giant, you know, sprawling world. Star Trek has that. You know, Star Wars has that. All these franchises have that. And the ones that are successful, that don't get turned into franchises. And I'm going to point to a film that I haven't seen in fucking years and pray that my point still stands with Blade Runner. Even though this word that's getting turned into a franchise, it's, as of right now, it's a standalone film. As of this current date of recording, it's a standalone film. With Blade Runner, the purpose of Blade Runner is to explore one particular science fiction idea, and that's, you know, that's the idea of androids or synthetics. And when you just have that one idea to explore, and perhaps there's other parts of that universe that are worth exploring that have certain truths in them, but based on what we know of it, and I've also read the book it's based on, so really we've only got one thing in there, is that, you know, we only have this one major science fiction idea that we can explore. And once we've done that, we've done it well, really no purpose to do it again and explore more of this world, because if we explore more of this world, it's either generic sci-fi or it's not necessary. So that's when you don't get a franchise, is when there's only one really major science fiction idea that affects the whole universe, and that's the thing that changes it, and that's really all you have to explore in order to get the idea. I think that's when we don't get a franchise, and when it's not necessary, and when it's still successful.
No,
Well,
the thing was, I got something to say to that. Sorry, Ian.
Go ahead.
That's really well put, Bill. But the thing is, with most science fiction, well, what science fiction should be, it's basically one giant idea space. If you with any sort of franchise, with Doctor Who, actually Doctor Who is a really good example, because Doctor Who is just this giant fertile pit of ideas. It's basically, there is no science fiction and sociological idea that is Even in Star Trek, you can't really. There's no scientific or sociological concept that is not off limits. We can discuss these, and sure, we can take these big, large, real-world things or these possibilities that could have happened to our world, and kind of explore their, not so logical conclusion, or what kind of world it would be if this particular, mechanical device or this particular sociological event happened. Like, how would androids and synthetic humans affect our everyday society? And that's the best kind of science fiction, I think, where you have these different things, these somewhat otherworldly things, scientifically advanced or what have you, and to see how these things can affect society. And I think, to bring it around to comic books, I think superhero comics are kind of the best example of that, because it's not that it's just a giant mixer, giant stew of genre, but especially with there's this really great scene in All-Star Superman, where basically, sure, it explores just insane, wondrous, Doctor Who level, Superman level science fiction ideas, and it's just all kind of different stuff. I mean, you got cross-dimensional sun eaters, but it explores all these different scientific ideas, and also transhumanism. And sure, it's fun to see how a world would look like if there's like one tiny little scientific advancement, and how that would change the world. That's fascinating enough. But when you have all these different scientific advancements coming together all at once, like how most technology evolves, it's not one single thing, it all evolves at the same time. And how I love to see worlds where every other thing is filled with wonder and majesty and just scientific technology that is beyond our comprehension. But this is
actually, that kind of leads into what I was going to say, Milan, if you don't mind me
go ahead.
jumping in here. One of the things that Alex wants to talk about, so we'll get more into this topic in a later video when Superhero Enthusiast comes onto the show, is how much can comics, television shows, what have you, relate to us when, by the very virtue of their premise, the world would change completely. Once Superman shows up, you can't tell a realistic story past the first one. It can't be, Earth with Superman. Now it's Earth after Superman,
Yeah, which is a really interesting idea.
Once you get aliens, once you get robots or whatever, once you have first contact or AI, you have a completely different world, and everything changes after that.
Yeah, but the thing is, with that is...
Well, no, let's not get too far into that. It's just something interesting to think about.
One thing...
And that's actually why I think sci-fi has such a great ability to franchise, because even if your one change to the status quo is just, it wouldn't affect everything, like one of my favorite sci-fi films, Inception. You have dream sharing. That's not going to affect every single level of society. But at the same time, it's such a fascinating premise that I demand a sequel, because I want to see them play around in that world more and see some more of the rules of dream sharing and the things that can go wrong with it. It demands, sci-fi tends to demand continuation. Even the movie we were doing last week, The Man from Earth, I kind of want to see another thing with that character. It's such a fascinating premise. I want to see what else that character has to say or do.
Yeah, sci-fi is a well of limitless ideas and intrigue. But the thing with that, it's see, you said like when something completely different, like Superman or robots, comes along, the world becomes different. I mean, sure, it becomes different, but the thing is, people stay the same. I mean, sure, Superman is a superhuman, but if All-Star Superman doesn't teach us anything...
We're not talking about that, though. We're going to get into that when we have Superhero Enthusiasts.
Okay.
Let's save that for then. If I may kind of switch our direction a little bit here, one idea that was bouncing around in my head as I was walking home from work tonight to get to this discussion is the problem of a lot of modern sci-fi movies, and I'm gonna point to one specific franchise being Transformers. If you can call that science fiction or not, I don't know. I'm gonna say yes. Versus these television things, and that's the problem of science fiction movies with these giant sci-fi concepts, like, I don't know, transforming giant robots and aliens, tends to be too focused on the action and not enough on the consequences of that idea. When you have a Michael Bay level budget in order to do these transforming robots, sometimes the idea of what these things can do in a fight is considered far over and too far over the impact of these things and the way in which these things relate to each other. You know, what does it mean to be a transforming robot with a conscience? What does that mean for their planet? What does it mean to be a robot that transforms with a conscience who just lost their entire planet in a civil war? What does that mean? But no, instead it goes to how can these things beat the shit out of each other?
The thing with that is, that's the reason I hate the Transformers movies, and that's why a lot of people hate them. Because yes, you got the huge, limitless budget of a Michael Bay film, but you got this wonderful, fascinating sci-fi ideas. A giant, robot planet, big fucking robots, like cyborg society, just like coming to Earth. It's these big sci-fi ideas, and they just piss all that potential away to focus on some frat boy, fucking, 12-year-old dipshit.
It looks like kids playing with action figures.
Exactly.
On a multi-million-dollar budget.
Yeah, but the thing is,
that's basically all Michael Bay is. So
no, the thing is, Michael Bay, he's not an idiot. That's the thing.
Yes, he is.
He's a sociopath. See, the thing, he can direct. Of course he's schizophrenic. But the thing is, the man hates humanity. It's proven that he's a sociopath, and that's yes, he basically did make an action figure smashing into each other, but in live action. And he basically knew he could have had something there, but instead he chose just to spit on all the fans, say, fuck you, I don't care, this is what if people who like this, they're fucking idiots. He knows that the people who like this movies are idiots. He is a fucking cunt and a sociopath, and he just pissed away something that could have been a great science fiction franchise, and just wasted it for this stupid frat boy masturbation fest. Fuck you, Michael Bay, you sociopathic cunt.
All right, Milan, calm down.
That actually makes me think of something I wanted to talk about. I wrote a story in which Stanley Kubrick and Michael Bay met, and it was hilarious. But anyway,
I gotta hear that story.
Yeah, I gotta read that.
It's not very good. It's just kind of funny.
Well, just the premise alone would sell me.
Yeah. Anyway. Something that's worth mentioning, though, I mean, it's counter to my point, but I think we're all in agreement that we're all with TV here. Bill's the only one that hasn't really defined his position yet.
And I would say most of the time TV as well.
Yeah. Something that I think about that's interesting is the most iconic single contributions to sci-fi are all movies. We credit Star Wars with creating the idea of old futuristic technology. When people talk about the greatest science fiction piece ever made, a lot of people jump straight to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Or Metropolis.
Or Metropolis. That's fair enough too. When we think of these out there sci-fi premises, sure, Star Trek and Doctor Who and Stargate and Battlestar Galactica, they're the more well-known things out there in everybody's mind, but when you ask someone to think of major contributions to sci-fi as a whole, they think of Planet of the Apes. They think of all these different films. They don't necessarily think of an episode of Star Trek. I think that sci-fi works better on TV, but I think it's more influential in film.
Well, I think that part of that is because more people see movies and they do sit down and watch TV.
Yeah, because it's a larger audience, and you can give... The thing is with that is, you can have a giant sci-fi film that can bring a lot of people into this idea and into this world, but the thing is, you gotta... It's a weird kind of double-edged sword, because you gotta make it mainstream enough so the average dumbass on the street can go, oh, this is interesting. but you gotta sneak and weave in like a big concept science fiction ideas, to actually permeate, cut through the fog of mainstream minutia and actually get people
Actually, something
interested.
that seems like it might be doing that. I'm not sure how I feel about this movie yet. Is the new Matt Damon picture Elysium? I think it's called.
Oh yeah,
Saw the trailer for that. That looks like a very weird movie.
Yeah,
looks
I'm not
fucking
sure. I'm
amazing.
not sure how I'm gonna come down on it. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to watch.
I want to see it as well because it looks almost like a superhero movie, which is weird.
The thing is,
Yeah,
it's
It
looks
has
like
the
actually
vague, basic ideas of a superhero movie, which is interesting.
Well, like to me, it looks like this really fascinating sci-fi premise that needed a big budget to pull it off. So they wrote in an action subplot.
the thing.
right,
the
right,
thing,
yeah.
the thing with this movie, it's actually in the same universe as District 9.
Is it?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting. I wonder how
Yeah.
that's... Which kind of makes more sense. Oh, that might explain that tech then. The thing that he puts on that looks like Iron Man.
Possibly. But no, I mean, it's just that's something I've just been thinking of. I mean, yeah, sure, you can make the argument, well, it's a bigger audience, but how do you explain then people that haven't seen the film? I mean, when we did our review of Planet of the Apes, Milan made the point, I'd never seen this movie before, but I knew the Statue of Liberty scene was going to come. I mean, I made that same point too. But you know about these movies whether or not you've seen them. And it's not just because of you're going to reach a bigger audience. It's because there's something about these movies that's influencing the entire medium.
Right. Right, very true. I actually like to go back to a point that Milan was saying before about with a lot of science fiction, you have to kind of sell it to your common idiot on the street. And that's very true, and that's why I think science fiction tends to lean towards the more, the more thoughtful. I'm gonna throw out this word, intellectual, echelons of society. Why, more people who, more
Use their brains.
more intellectually focused people will sit down and read Android Dream of Electric Sheep. And you're a sports fan, and I hate broad generalizations, but I'm just going to use them to make a point, and I apologize for that. Your NFL Sunday watcher is more often than not going to sit down and read Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. And I think part of that is let me finish. I think part of that is because a lot of science fiction properties, novels in particular, don't jump right into the characters. Because these people don't get into it because they're idiots. That's not what I'm trying to say. But they're more about personal relatability than they are about widespreading ideas. And a lot of science fiction properties, again, especially novels, start out with the wide idea and then explore it via personal characters. Android's Dream of Electric Sheep is an example I've been using. It does that. And a lot of properties do, and it's because they have to set up the world. Another book I read a few years back that I don't remember the title of. It was kind of a weird... it was a good book, but it was a little very, very unusual. It was all about superpowers and stuff, but it wasn't really a superhero book. Because they spent... And this is usually what the prologue is. It establishes what is science fiction about this world and what's different about it, how it works. And then it gets into the characters, and a lot of people, it's very hard for them to start reading that and then stay with it because it's not personally relatable. Because it's starting out with what's different and then gets into what's similar. It's a lot of people can't find their way into it.
That's part of why sci-fi tends to, like mystery to a certain extent, tends to work better on film because you can see the differences of the world. I mean, how many sci-fi movies open with these giant sweeping shots of cityscapes and show the daily lives in just the opening shots of the film while the opening credits are still
or narration. How many science fiction movies open with narration?
Yeah, and I mean, it's usually a prologue, but it's a fast, you guys are going to, of course, harp on me for this, but here's a good one. Green Lantern. They introduce the premise of how the Green Lantern Corps works in the first 2 minutes of the film.
Yes.
And you immediately know it, and they didn't have to explain it again later, but they did. I don't think they knew they had that when they were filming the movie. I don't know.
The thing with that,
stuff like that. I mean, Star Wars, you get the opening credits scroll, the iconic opening credits scroll. Sci-fi tends to work better on film for that reason, whereas in a book you have to read about how the world's different before you can get into your character.
To that point,
the thing is with sci-fi, it's essentially a world. If you're a huge world building buff, the sci-fi is mainly focused on world building and societal influence and how something can influence society. It's not. That's why, if with most sci-fi, if it doesn't have if it's mainly too focused on the world building and kind of forgets character and character development, I think that's why most people have this perception of sci-fi of like, oh, it's just a bunch of guys railing on about how wonderful this idea and this world is, and they don't have any character. But that's the thing. I guess that's what the average Joe on the street thinks. There isn't any character development in these stories. It's just a bunch of jargon that I won't be able to understand.
right.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, part of it is you kind of have to, not for all sci-fi, obviously, but for a lot of it, you have to kind of actually know some science to be able to get why the premise works, why it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Jurassic Park when I was a kid, but I find it fascinating still because the premise of bringing dinosaurs back by cloning DNA is, you know, I mean, it's not accurate, but it's interesting enough, and if you know just a tiny bit about it, it sounds plausible for a couple seconds there.
Right. It tricks you into thinking that it's possible, and then you turn to your mother and go, "Mommy, why aren't there any dinosaurs alive anymore?"
And then your mom's like, "God damn it, kid."
I didn't.
You need to stop watching Godzilla.
No, it's
No, I
like
mean, it's just one of those-
she's like, oh, I left high school for you, so don't ask me.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, I hate. I'm not gonna name names here, but I was talking to a friend of mine's mother, and we were watching Jeopardy at his house, and they ask on the show, "What is the 8th planet from the sun?" And I say the answer right away, and she's like, "No, it's Pluto." I'm like, "Pluto's no longer a planet, and you'd still be wrong even if it was." And then they give the answer, and she's like, "Well, I've been focusing on being a mother for the last 20." She's got to justify herself. I'm like, this is basic knowledge that you learn in school, but it's still, that's the thing. You have to keep up with it. You have to remember it. You have to think about these kind of things
oh, sure.
in order to think about these things taken even farther.
You know, there's this. God fucking. Hold on, keep talking. Don't worry about it. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I would just like to make a point to what Ian was saying before about about, you know, science fiction works better on film because you get to see the world without having to describe it for 10 minutes or 10 pages. And to that point, when reading Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, my biggest problem with it was that I didn't think the descriptions were very good because some of the things didn't make any sense based on what the author was describing. And again, it was a great book. But the way he describes what a laser gun looks like doesn't make any sense. Because you basically have to, the way he describes it, imagine one of those plastic tubes that you can sometimes get M&Ms in, and that it somehow functions as a gun. And I'm like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
So it's like a laser wand?
Kind of, yeah. And it doesn't make any sense based on how he's describing it working. He's just using this visual aid, and it doesn't make any sense. And then you see Blade Runner, which may or may not use that similar idea. And it's a gun, and I'm just like, thank you. Thank you for making it make sense. And my point is, you get to look at these out there science fiction weapons and technology and stuff, and you don't have to have it described to you via words. You just get to see it, and you can analyze it visually without having to worry about someone's interpretation being confusing. Imagine describing a sonic screwdriver to someone who never saw it.
Yeah, or just as a more general premise, imagine trying to describe a lightsaber.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I mean, I think my favorite one was actually in that 70s show. When Eric Foreman gets back from seeing Star Wars for the first time.
Great episode.
And he has to try to describe what a lightsaber is. It's a sword made out of light. What?
See, the genius of that episode was that Star Wars was this incredible dent in pop culture, and it makes such a big deal out of it to the point of comedy. I love that. It's one of my favorite episodes of that show.
Yeah, I mean it's quite brilliant. The only thing that could have made it better is if it had been the '80s show and it was Eric Foreman describing RoboCop to his father. That'd have been amazing.
Do you remember the episode where Red and Eric are sitting at the kitchen table, and every time Eric has to describe what a tool is and what it does, Red has to pick up a Star Wars action figure and describe the character, and he always gets them wrong, and Eric always gets the tools right? It's like socket wrench, used to wrench in sockets, or whatever he says. And then Red picks up Darth Vader, and it's just like, he goes, it's fucking hilarious.
No, I haven't seen that one. I've watched that
it's genius.
religiously for a while, but I kind of dropped off of it.
The later seasons
that went on for way too long.
Yeah, the last 2 seasons are like an abortion.
Yeah. Though I did like the idea that Fez turned into a ladies' man. That was
yeah, it made a lot of sense, but it was done terribly.
Yeah.
You also can't change where the hangout place is. You can't change it from Eric's basement to Jackie's apartment. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. But anyway, this isn't a review of that 70s show.
Which we need to do at some point.
Maybe, I don't know.
No, we will not. We will not, please.
We're doing it now. That's my next topic.
I hate
Actually,
you.
Bill, you have topic pick this week.
And it's a review topic.
Yeah.
Ugh.
We're not doing the entire series.
We'll see.
If
Well,
you
I'll let you guys know at the end what we're doing next week. I'll make it a surprise for you guys too.
Anyway,
Okay.
there's this one thing I wanted to mention before my dad fucking interrupted me. Basically, you said before that this mother of a friend, kind of made a scientific error, and basically tried to justify her ignorance by saying, "Oh, I had to focus to be a mother," and to not learn this
Of course,
basic.
Milan gives her a southern accent.
Yeah, of course, but it's weird because that's kind of the vein that I see in most people. They're like, they try to be they don't really give a fuck, but when they try to be, quote unquote, seem like they're intellectuals and they're proven wrong, they kind of always try to justify themselves. Even on TV, there was this one woman who didn't know if the world was flat or not, if the world was round, and basically, what happened? Like, she's like, "Oh,
Hold on, Milan. I hate to interrupt you, but this is public education, and we need to make sure that people know this, okay?
Exactly.
For the last time, everybody, the world is a flat plate on the back of a giant tortoise who is standing on an even larger tortoise, and its tortoises all the way down.
I know, but
the universe is a stack of infinite turtles.
No, you didn't say it right. The universe is just a stack of infinitely larger turtles.
Yeah,
I just love that sentence and that phrasing.
That's the thing. She didn't know that this was the fact of the world. She thought the world was round, and basically Whoopi Goldberg said like, "Oh, wait, so you don't know like what shape is the world?" And she's like, I don't know, Whoopi," and it's like you don't know if the world is flat or not, and it's like. I mean, like, it's just this horrible education system, but it can't be that bad. Maybe it's just people don't give a fuck, and that's even more
like
terrifying.
And they pass out memories that aren't important anymore, and they just focus on the important stuff.
Yeah.
How can you not know that the Earth revolves around the sun? It's not important to the case.
Okay, good enough. Good one, Bill.
Thanks for saving us.
You're welcome.
No,
you know what?
but
Sherlock saves everything. It's like the Superman of television.
No, I mean, that's actually something that's really interesting to talk about in sci-fi is, you usually won't get this in films, and maybe it's because of that larger audience we were talking about, but you get it a lot in television series for sci-fi. The theme of anti-intellectualism. I mean, the most iconic story of anti-intellectualism that deals with sci-fi is, of course...
Idiocracy.
No, not Idiocracy, though I do love that movie. No, it's, Christ, what's the name of it? They parody
the
it
most iconic science fiction film that deals with this idea.
Time Enough at Last.
What was it called again?
Time Enough at Last, and you might not know the title, but I guarantee you know it. You ready?
Yes.
There was time now! I had time now!
No, I'm not ringing any bells. Sorry.
Really,
It's-
the guy that drops his glasses.
Oh
when he-
yeah, the Twilight Zone. Like that's not fair. That's not fair at all.
Sorry, not ringing any bells.
Oh,
Really? Like, dude, alright, hold on. This guy's in a library after the world has just ended. He's got these really thick glasses on. And he's going to read a book because he never had the chance to read a book before. He never had time to read a book before. And he pulls a book off the shelf, and his glasses fall off and break on the ground. They parody this everywhere. Futurama, Simpsons, Family Guy, everything parodies this scene.
I have missed a major part of pop culture. I will now.
Really, you fucking...
I will now hand in my geek card. I apologize.
Like, seriously, I can't believe you never even... Like, even the reference... It's one of those things, like, It's up there with you blew it up, you maniacs.
I mean, that's kind of like that right next to it. I mean, Bill, where were you?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's you maniacs, you blew it up, you maniacs. Luke, I am your father, and there was time now. That's the three right there.
That is that
Was
Bill.
too busy being a mother.
No, and then under that is like, I can't do that, Dave. Like, those are some of the most iconic lines in science
I
fiction.
know
history.
all of those except for that one. I feel like.
Oh my God, you were too busy being a mother.
Yeah, Time Enough at Last is... Let me explain the premise of the story. There's this little, geeky guy, and he's just got the biggest glasses in the world, and he keeps trying to find time to read. He wants to read a book, or he wants to read a magazine, like, intellectual magazine at work, and just, his wife doesn't like books. She thinks they're for, snobby people, so she actually, blacks out the lines in his books, even though he hides them. Like, it gets so bad at his house. He hides books from her so that he can read them in his leisure, and when he finds them, and when he takes them out of his hiding place, his wife had found them and blacked out the lines. And
What
at
a
work,
horrible
What a bitch!
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
did he stay married to her? What a fucking...
It was the 60s. Divorce wasn't a thing. Anyway,
Why didn't he kill her? I would have killed that bitch.
well, anyway, no, but, and at work, wants to read a magazine, but his boss keeps ordering him around to do this, that, and the other thing, and he works in a bank, and he gets locked in a bank vault, during, it's set in the Cold War, during a nuclear explosion.
Obviously.
So he gets out of the vault. He's the only human being left in this entire area from what we can see. And, he finds himself some food, and he finds himself some other necessities of life. And apparently he doesn't die from the radiation because it's science fiction. And then he goes to the library, and he's really excited because he never gets to walk in the library. Like, the way this woman that wrote the story describes the library is like he's looking on the gates of heaven. And he runs through the library, and he's grabbing all these books that he's always wanted to read, and he's getting a big stack for himself. And just when he sits down to read the first book, his glasses fall off of his face, and they shatter right on the ground beneath him, and he starts to cry and weep, saying there was time now, there was finally time. And it's one of the most iconic scenes, and the whole story is obviously about anti-intellectualism. That his wife doesn't want him to read because it's snobby, and his boss doesn't want him to read because it's more important to do these other things. And when he finally gets the chance, it's too late, essentially. Even though he survived the apocalypse, it's too late for him to read anything. And that's just a fascinating premise because, the whole moral of the story is read now, think now. You don't have time later. There's never going to be a point at which you have infinite time to do all of these things that you keep meaning to do to better yourself or become a more well-rounded person. So it's one of those things. Like, I've never seen anti-intellectualism approached in a film, science fiction film at least, but I've seen it countless times in sci-fi television.
Right, and I would say that part of that, and this was an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
Okay.
most famous episode of The Twilight Zone.
I would say that part of that is that it's a really small idea. It's very, very simple. You don't even have to show the nuclear explosion. You just have to have it happen off screen while this guy's locked in the bank vault. And I think that a movie studio would be like, how are you going to get 90 minutes out of this? And I could say that there is definitely a way to do it, but I think that that's why it would work better on television, because it's a small story and it focuses more on character development. And
well, no, I'm just talking about anti-intellectualism on the whole. I've never really seen it be a major theme or a major part of a science fiction film. I mean, they approach anti-intellectualism a lot, especially in films that are supposed to be inspirational. I forget the name of the movie, but there's the one about the Hispanic math teacher that teaches the inner city kids. They made fun of it on South Park once. How do I reach these kids? But that's all about learning to go beyond your limits. There's also the Hilary Swank movie that was very much the same thing. And I don't know, that one seemed a little bit insulting around about the point where she asked, how many of you kids know what the Holocaust is? And only one kid in the class raised his hand, and he was also the only white person.
Oh, is that the one that's
wow.
Freedom Writers? Is it called?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
one seemed just a little ridiculous.
Wait, black people don't know about the Holocaust? Is that what this movie's saying?
That seemed like the premise.
Wow.
Those movies are certainly about, the problems of anti-intellectualism and marginalization of minorities, especially in the intellectual fields. But it's something you rarely see touched on in science fiction as far as film goes.
Well, what you see a lot is it's turned into the cliche of the ones who only care about material things, like money and such. And it's not really explored in the way in which this episode of The Twilight Zone seems to. It's more of like, oh, they don't care about intellectualism or science or all that, they just care about money. And that's really the only couple times you see it in science fiction and other such films, is when it's turned into that greedy capitalism cliche.
Maybe it's just maybe we should have more stories about pissing all over stupid people and making them feel bad for being.
Well,
that's the thing I want to say. I mean, there's kind of like in society, at least nowadays, it's like, yo, you're stupid. It's okay. I mean, I was a stupid kid growing up, and that's why I wanted to better myself, because everyone kept saying you're a dumb subhuman piece of shit, and I'm like, I'm gonna make myself not a subhuman pile of shit, and it's arguable if I succeeded at least somewhat, but
well, I don't know. You tend to say some really hilariously wrong things.
Yeah, I know.
I do, but the things, at least that's the thing. At least I try. I try to better myself, and I try to study more and learn new things. I'm not a smart motherfucker. I'm a dumb motherfucker.
You're not content with being ignorant, which is definitely
that's a thing.
You can't be criticized for your ignorance if you're constantly trying to make it better, I think. I think that one can be criticized and one should be criticized if you hear something like this. Okay, who was Julius Caesar? I don't know. That's a problem. No, it's not. It doesn't relate to my life in any way. I'm like, no, it's important to human history. So
yeah,
it is important. That's what I'm.
See, now you're getting into something that annoys the hell out of me, and I've kind of just gotten to the point where I go, never mind. But when I say things like, who is Immanuel Kant? And people just go, I don't know. Just God damn it. But even more so than that, getting out of my major, I really hate that people don't understand, especially in today's world, why this joke is funny. People, there's a reason Texas is so hard on immigration. They know what happens when you have a bunch of foreign people just come into your country free of charge and start living there. No one knows what
I get that. You told this joke.
No, you have to understand how Texas became a state. Because Texas...
I know, you told this joke.
Remember the Alamo!
No, let me explain this, because I'm sure there are people watching this that haven't seen this explanation before. Texas was a territory owned by Mexico after the revolution from Spain. And they were having trouble with jump-starting their new economy, and there's just this big, wide-open area of land that no one was living in. So they invited all these Americans to just move out there free of charge, and their only thing is they had to make improvements to the land, and if they're there 5 years from now, then they start collecting taxes on these people. And then, so the Americans start moving out there, and then they're like, okay, time to collect taxes, and the guys are like, huh, no, revolution time. So then they take over the territory of Texas and kick the Mexicans out of it. And that's why that joke is hilarious.
I would like to make a counter joke that I am going to steal from an American Werewolf in London. So, the United Nations, all the members of the United Nations are sitting on a plane. And the plane starts to run out of fuel, and they have to make it to New York. So they have to lighten the load in order to make it there. So they have to start tossing out members of the United Nations. So, first, out jumps the Englishman who shouts, "God save the Queen." Then a couple of other nationalities jump out, scream it's to save their nation, for the betterment of their nation. Then the United States stands up and says, "Remember the Alamo," and throws a Mexican person out the plane. It's funnier in the movie, but I like that joke a lot.
Mexicans. I mean, like.
Let's not
it's
talk
so
about
funny. No. I want to say it's pro-Mexican. It's anti-Texas. The Texans are fucking. Texans are fucking hypocrites. I mean, like, oh, we're gonna get those Mexicans out. No, you stole their fucking subscribers. Fuck them. If you're a Texan, and if you're one of those Confederate flag waving motherfuckers, go fuck yourself.
I don't disagree with him on this point. I have no problem losing subscribers that happen to be anti-Semites or racists.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. We're just whittling away the assholes from our subscriber count.
Anyway. No, but I mean, it's anti-intellectualism, and I think the reason that you don't see it in film, though, to get back to the main topic here, I think the reason you don't see it in film is because they're trying not to alienate larger audiences. Whereas you got things like Star Trek, and they can totally approach things like this because they know they're in a niche market, you know? They know who their audience is, and they know their audience is into this kind of stuff, so they don't mind commenting on ignorance.
Very true. Very true.
I don't know, it's like intellectualism is honestly something that should... Anti-intellectualism, I'm sorry, is honestly something that should be covered more broadly because Richard Dawkins, and I don't like this man, but he did make a really good point. How many science fiction films can you think of where the scientist is the hero and he's not cleaning up his own mess?
Oh my god.
That's a Contact, and it's not the scientist
Independence Day.
The original Godzilla.
Independence Day. What's the other one? I'm trying to remember the name of it with the meteor that they have to drill on.
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Those are about the only three that I...
Godzilla.
The original Godzilla, sure. Alright, so we got 4 movies.
But the thing is, Armageddon is not even that because it's not scientists. It's just a bunch of blue-collar drill workers that are sent on this asteroid.
Fair, is Dr. Serizawa the hero of the original Godzilla? Is the point? But whatever, he's one of the protagonists, and he kills Godzilla, and he had nothing to do with his birth. Although he does commit suicide in order to prevent the weapon he used to kill Godzilla from getting out there.
So anyway, he's enough.
Rambling.
It's one of those really interesting things. Is anti-intellectualism should be approached and should be demonized in film on the wire market area where it'll touch people and make them think about their own lives, but they just don't touch it because they don't want to alienate audiences.
Well, here it's especially important in our present-day culture where everyone is obsessed with their own life with the birth of social media. And it's hilarious because the internet is becoming a major part of life today, and you've got all this information about human history and about all this scientific information, and a lot of people don't
Give a fuck.
access it, give it a look because they're obsessed with their Facebook accounts and their Twitter accounts, and I have both, so maybe I'm a hypocrite, but
No, because you use Twitter right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
How you enjoying? How are you liking Twitter?
Oh, I love it. I love it to death.
Do it.
It's funny. It's funny that people have basically an iPhone as a miniature supercomputer in your pants pocket. It's basically science fiction Star Trek. Trust that. It's basically science fiction Star Trek technology, and nobody gives a shit.
I give a shit. I've said this on the podcast before. My iPhone is my child, and it is the closest thing I will ever have to a magic wand.
Exactly.
So I absolutely respect the amazingness of this little piece of technology that I'm holding in my hand right now and I'm stroking. But
I mean, Louis C.K. actually, I think, made the best point about what we're getting at here. He was talking about being on an airplane, and right as they were about to take off, the captain came over to the intercom and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, the free wireless internet is not going to be accessible during this flight. I'm afraid it's down. Sorry for the inconvenience." And Louis like, and I'm sitting next to this guy, and he goes, "Great." I'm like, asshole, that wasn't even available a couple years ago. And anyway, you're in a fucking metal tube that's going to leave the ground and travel thousands of feet into the air and transport you across thousands of miles in a matter of hours. We are in the pinnacle of technology. Everything's amazing and no one is happy.
Well, it's just part of the human condition that no one is ever satisfied with the current. We're always looking towards, the future will be better. It'll be better when It'll be better when we can travel those thousands of miles without having to wait hours.
The thing is, it's interesting. There's this kind of phenomenon of when new technology is introduced to a population. At first, yes, everyone's kind of like amazed by it, like, oh, it's a light bulb. We don't have to make fires anymore to light our houses. But then it kind of, it's just a very simple example, but after a while, the amazement kind of levels out, and the society incorporates this new technology into everyday use to the point where it just becomes the everyday. And that's the thing, like, no matter how much wondrous, teleporter tubes, flying cars, at first, when they first come, everyone will be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But once they get integrated into the society, they will become part of the everyday. They'll be like, hey, that's a park bench, that's a flying car, no biggie. It's basically, whatever.
Yeah, actually, that's why I've said this a couple times. A lot of people that are really, scientifically inclined and really love technology will disagree with me, and they're perfectly welcome to, but I still think that Idiocracy or Futurama, if you're optimistic, are the most realistic portrayals of a future society given our current culture's progression. We just have this Futurama, just because there's all this amazing technology and no one cares. They're still just as self-absorbed and idiotic, arguably more so, than they are right now. And Idiocracy, really, it's kind of worse, but slightly more depressing.
Right.
It's not really
a personal.
That's
first.
One little thing before. Sorry, Bill. Just before we
Not
lose
okay.
this train of thought. I'm sorry. Look, it's interesting that it's not really a bad thing that people incorporate new technology into their everyday life and they become the everyday. But I think that's more of an incentive for people to keep looking to the future. I mean, it's not we shouldn't take the things we have now for granted. I mean, it's wonderful. That's why I kind of dropped being a sad, silly little bitch, because I'm like, oh, everything is terrible. No, it kind of isn't.
Actually, let me interrupt you again real quick. John Green was doing a questions answers video, and someone asked him, if you could live in any time period in human history, what would it be? And he says, right now, because everything is amazing. Like, I didn't die at 12.
Well, let me throw this out there to that point. I think the easiest thing in the world for anyone to do is lose perspective. It is one of the easiest things to do in the world, because all you have to do for it to happen is sit on your ass and use everything that's given to you, because and just bitch about it, because it's so easy to lose perspective. To keep perspective in place, you have to work hard. You have to be humble. You have to keep in mind the things going on around you. You have to keep in mind, okay, this has not always been this way. There are people out there who have worse lives than I do. My life could be worse. I have to try and make my life better. All these different things. And it's, and I'm not going to say that our society our current modern day American society has the worst tendency to lose perspective, because I didn't live 25 years ago. So I don't know if it was worse back then. And it's something I keep bouncing back in my mind of. Everyone complains about our modern day society, and how stupid people are, and how they don't, they're depressed and they're assholes. And I'm like, how different was it before I was born? You know what I mean? Like, what changed?
And, yeah, I mean, to be fair, we've brought this up on the show once before, and Alec was there this time, and Alec was there that time, and he did say it's not any different, it's just more visible now.
That's a point I agree with.
I mean, maybe. I still don't. I don't buy it. I honestly think
I have to agree with Alec.
just kind of shitbags.
No, I agree, because the thing is, I think I agree with Alex, because Alec, I mean, people didn't really have the same visibility back then. Everything wasn't seen. I mean, if a cop or a knight or something killed and raped a family, or killed the wife and killed the kids and did something horrible, you didn't really know. It's just kind of, it's something horrible happened, but we don't
know
why.
Louis C.K. did make the same point too. He made a whole video about it, where he was talking about the Catholic Church and interviewing them about the whole rape of altar boys thing. And the priest he's interviewing, quote unquote, says, "Are you sure you weren't raped when you went to Catholic school? We're very thorough." And it's something that's just been going on for decades, and no one ever reported on it.
Well, I mean, that's funny and all, but I'm trying to more make the point of, it's everyone bitches and moans about modern society, but it's like, I wonder how much of it is the state of modern society and how much of it is the human condition to just do that as one gets older and the society changes and the person doesn't. And I think that it's safe to say that the three of us, when we're 55, will look at the current society and be like, what a bunch of ungrateful pricks.
Well, I feel that way.
I think it's...
I've always kind of actually felt that way. I mean, I'm a huge history buff, and I think that there is nothing... If you're a betting man, there is no surer bet in the world than to bet on people fucking themselves over.
Right.
On a global scale, consistently.
That's a guarantee. But the thing is, people who say that, they say, the world can't really come together because everyone's a fucking dumbass asshole who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and it's only a matter of time before the world ends. Every generation thinks they are the last generation, even
that's a very good
Bible.
Point.
I mean, everyone thinks
I don't think I'm the last generation. I just think that we have a tendency as a race to just kind of do dumb shit.
Well, yeah, but I think that it's always been that way.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said it's...
Okay, yeah.
But I think there's I gotta disagree.
Hold on, let me finish. We have just a tendency as a race to just be shitty people. We have... It's weird, in all these different cultures, there's kind of a narrative of this ideal human being that's, like, very moral and very just and always does the right thing, but they never follow it.
Right.
Like, every culture makes the same mistakes to me.
I completely agree.
But the thing is with that is, sure, people, the majority of people are dumb, stupid, and panicky animals. But the thing with that is, it's kind of... I mean, there's an obvious improvement in, cultural. I mean, it's not good to be a racist anymore. It's not good to be, you can't say, these people are lesser than me, and people will not give a shit. Like, oh, that's just what they think. Okay, I mean, if you say something bad about somebody because of their skin color or race or religion, that is a bad thing. That is seen as a negative thing. Sure, some
Fair
people.
enough, but at the same time, that was kind of a I'm not going to say a loop, but more of just a retread, because I mean, Aristotle, as sexist and completely wrong that man as a man he was, I mean, you want a good laugh, read Aristotle's Science. Did you know women are actually a birth defect? um, but anyway, Aristotle didn't dismiss the humanity of a slave. He didn't dismiss the idea that slaves were people too. They were just people in a bad circumstance. He was sexist, but most people are in history. I mean, it's kind of a major exception for anyone not to be a sexist as far as historical markers go.
And it's funny when you watch a piece of historical fiction, like if you watch, I'm going to use this recent example for me personally, if you watch The Mask of Zorro, and it's like, it's early 1800s California, very few of the people treat women like objects. I mean, there's a few lines where they're just like, oh, the political view of a woman. But all, like, the protagonists are, like, these modern-day men living in this other world where it's like, oh, women have equal rights to us, and slavery is wrong. I just find that hilarious, because I'm like, if Zorro was a real person, he would probably not be very likable in the modern context.
Probably not. Let's try to wrap back though.
Yeah, let's get back into sci-fi. Can I make a point?
But one more thing before we move on back to sci-fi. There is an obvious, cultural progression. Sure, it's slow and it's painful, but things are getting better. And people will disagree with me. It's like, oh, everything is shit. But at least it's almost getting better, but it might as well not be, because it's so slow and there's always more stupid people than there are good people. But the thing is, there is that kind of society moves slowly. It doesn't change overnight. It takes decades.
I mean, yeah, you're getting to the point. Rome wasn't built in a day, and fair enough. My point though is it's more, you're thinking of it as kind of a line, whereas honestly it's more of kind of a jagged loop. Maybe a spiral if you're lucky.
I'm gonna make this final point in our great big tangent of anti-intellectualism, and society's falling apart is kind of where I think we're getting to. I think the biggest difference between us and the Roman Empire, because I hear a lot of people who think that America is on the downslope compare us to the Roman Empire, is that Milan, you and I are having a conversation right now about these ideas.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest difference between us and these ancient societies that fell apart, because we are aware of other societies' existence. And it doesn't make that kind of situation impossible, it just changes it, because we're looking at different societies and most of us are communicating with them on a scale we can never before because of the internet. And we're learning from each other's mistakes, their different mistakes, our similar mistakes, and it's something that's never really happened before in society just because of the ease of access on the internet.
Yeah, and actually...
Totally, I completely agree with you. That's why everything's getting a little bit better, because we have these...
Okay.
We have the... Yeah.
Let's use that point right there to get back to the topic as a whole. I didn't mind getting onto this big idea of society debate kind of thing, and how good it is, or how well it's progressing, because that's a major theme in all sci-fi, both in film and television. So we're getting close to the end of the show here. Let's wrap up on that and just discuss which one handles that better. I mean, a movie has the nice touch of a fine point, being able to say exactly what you mean about society and then end and wrap up. Whereas a series kind of has to keep going, so you risk, taking these lessons you've learned or these commentaries you've made on our societies or on the world as we know it with this world that we don't know of, and you risk retreading or just completely forgetting and contradicting those old lessons.
Right.
But that's the thing. I mean, with that, it's with the TV series. With the movie series, it's kind of sure you have to be more condensed in your ideas, and you gotta basically a movie. If you want to be a really serious science fiction movie, sure you gotta have the visuals, you gotta have the scientific intrigue, the political intrigue. The movie has to be more condensed. It's got to be like a punch to the gut to get its ideas across. While a TV series is more decompressed, it has more time to explore the world more ideas. It has so much more opportunity to go in depth on the little details of the world and the more and on the concepts of what it's playing with.
Right. It's got to be a lot more to the point. And
Yeah.
A movie has finality.
Right,
Exactly.
A movie likes to make one giant sweeping point about one of these science fiction ideas. And I'm going to point to an unusual example, an example that's popping in my mind with The Running Man. The Running Man has a very interesting world and a very visually impressive world. And what it does is it starts out by exploring the problems of this society, and then it ends with the society getting a little bit better with the destruction of the Running Man. And it's one story, and they do their best to completely wrap up anything that could happen in this world, along with these science fiction ideas. If you did a Running Man TV series, you couldn't destroy the Running Man in one episode, really, because you would want to explore the full impacts of the Running Man throughout like at least one season. And then maybe the season finale would be Arnold Schwarzenegger's character bursting into the arena and killing the game show host, and and saying I forget the fucking one-liner he uses, but he bursts in, he says something, and then he shoots him in the face. It's I don't do requests. And it's because the guy asks him to stop, and he says, I don't do requests. But with a TV series, and I'm also going to say this, how many, science fiction TV series especially display the future as a utopia? Like Star Trek did. Star Trek came right out and said, yeah, it's a utopia.
Well, Star Wars was a utopia.
Well, if you're gonna believe the old Republic, then they're gonna say, yeah, it was a utopia until the Sith showed up, and then there's been this constant kind of shift from Republic to Empire to Republic again, to Sith Empire again, and then back to Republic. It's just this ongoing shift, and
Gallifrey was supposedly perfect.
And then the Time War came along.
Yeah.
Well, and then the Doctor says, perfect to look at, maybe. Because he, of course, hated it. And that's why he ran. And then, of course, the Time War showed up, and the Doctor was like, this is why these people suck. And why I am
the problem with the Time Lords was they were complete bureaucrats, which is always great commentary. I love future bureaucracy because it's always so much fun.
That's why I want a Time War movie.
No. Have you seen, as the movie isn't fantastic, but have you seen the film version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yeah, I have.
With the
oh my god,
bureaucratic aliens that blow up Earth, it's hilarious.
Oh my god, it's just one giant play on British bureaucracy of just this slow-moving, soulless, hateful, de-evolutionized fucking globs of shit that are somewhat sentient but have no creativity or souls, and that's your average bureaucrat.
Yeah, unless you can limbo. No, but it's one of those interesting things that you see in sci-fi, both in film and television, is it uses... They almost always do social commentary as opposed to really interesting character stuff. They're out there. The Man from Earth is a bit of both.
Right.
But, when you get into it, it's almost... Sci-fi leans way more towards social commentary, and I suppose the kind of polar opposite of it that leans way more toward character would be Western, which is weird how much those two end up having in common. In the
Right,
end.
because Star Wars is kind of like a Western in space in some regards.
Well, I mean, you could
It's
say
like
the
a
same thing
samurai's
about
tale in space.
You can
Yeah,
say the same.
yeah, that's-
You can say the same thing about Trek or about, Firefly's obviously the perfect example of how those two blend so well.
Although it's funny how often samurai stories and Western stories get mishmashed. Like the Magnificent Seven is a remake of Seven Samurai.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. It's just the East meets West kind of dynamic that you got the dirt meets the stars kind of thing. That's what works so well about Cowboys and Aliens is it's always really similar plot devices that make these movies work. It's just Westerns don't focus on these big sweeping concepts. They focus on making their characters really dynamic and really interesting and really likable, and obviously good
Or very
cinematography
despicable.
goes into the films too. But with sci-fi, they don't focus so much on character. They focus more on what they're trying to say about the world.
And sometimes that comes with character development, but oftentimes the character development is there to enhance the social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, to go back to The Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character goes through the development of realizing that all this is wrong because he starts to experience it. And, it's more to make the point of don't let game shows get to the point where they start killing people.
Wait a minute. So is Gamer just basically like a remake of Running Man?
Yes, but modern.
Yes and no. I mean, in the same vein, so was the Hunger Games. I mean, they're all similar in Battle Royale. They're all they all have a similar premise. They just have these little different twists that kind of make them different. I would say the Hunger Games is way closer to the Running Man than Gamer is, because Gamer at least has the twist of it's not the people. It's not the criminals just being thrown into an arena and telling them to shoot each other. It's gamers controlling the criminals killing each other.
I thought that was such a cool idea, and I really liked, what's his name? Michael C. Hall?
Oh. I don't...
The guy that plays Dexter. Anyway, I really liked
Michael C. Hall.
Yeah, I turned my brain into a transmitter. That is so badass. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on it. I think we really got to some interesting places with this video.
We did.
Yeah.
Definitely did.
Yeah.
Laughed, we cried, hugged. It was a time.
Yeah. It was wonderful. But everyone, just before we wrap up, I just gotta say, we do this kind of this. If you want to come on the show and Skype in, there's this little offer that I do. If you are the first person to Skype in, if you've never Skyped in before, I get to draw you. Well, in any sort of, if you want me to draw you, of course, I get to draw you. And in any way you want, as your favorite comic book hero, as any pose you want, just whatever. If you're the first person to Skype in, I draw you. And so you get that image, and yeah.
And you can use it to whatever creepy extent you want.
Yep.
Why does it have to be creepy?
Because it's you.
No, they specify the look of the image. I mean, they can have it look as, with kittens and
right. And
jelly
of course,
babies.
Blue Dragon 5 was Commissioner Gordon, and Magpie was something I didn't understand.
The Crow.
Crow? You haven't seen the Crow?
Oh, that's what that was? Okay. Oh, I missed that completely, but it makes sense now. I didn't put those pieces together.
Okay, well, guys, this got to a really interesting place. We're gonna try to just say real quick. I mean, we all obviously lean towards television, but has anyone changed their mind to film throughout this conversation?
I think they both have their merits.
Because I like science fiction better when it's exploring ideas and not when it's just big, huge, out there action. Like, I still like Star Trek more than I like Transformers, because Star Trek is using all these out there concepts to explore all these really fascinating ideas and social commentaries and philosophical notions, as opposed to Transformers, where it's just like, we got a robot who can turn his arm into a chainsaw. How can he hurt that other robot in that way? Which is, it looks awesome, but who gives a fuck?
It's
more
more
to it
Star
than just a
Trek.
visual spectacle.
Yeah, Star Trek is more intellectually fulfilling.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, and I always find that to be a much more I always find that I strangely find that to be more entertaining than just a robot cutting off another robot's arm with a transforming chainsaw.
Totally.
I find it.
So, I mean, I guess that's really where it comes down to. I mean, what are you more into? I mean, the question, does sci-fi work better on film, well, they're both on film. Does sci-fi work better in television or in movies? It depends what you're into. If you're into action and, escapism, probably works better on film for you. But if you're into intellectualism and racking your brain about some social commentary or what have you, you're probably more likely to lean towards television.
Right.
So there you go, everybody. We kind of have a really open-ended one. I mean, it really depends on your taste to answer this question, I think. Obviously, we all lean toward television, but I'm not going to tell anyone there's something wrong with watching Star Wars,
Right, and again, Star Wars isn't brain dead. There's stuff interesting there, but it's a lot more about entertaining. It's a lot more about taking these old movie tropes and putting them into a science fiction scenario. And there's definitely an art to that. And Star Wars is extremely entertaining and extremely it's just an entertaining story to be told, but it's not really trying to say anything about philosophy or about the human condition. It's just trying to be entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's wonderful at that. It's not trying to be anything more than it is.
Until you get to the prequels.
Although I do really like Revenge of the Sith.
Well, I mean, that's the only good one, and it's still problematic.
Very, but I still love that movie.
There are some interesting things in they're not all bad. There are some interesting robotic designs, but yeah, they're bad, but they're not as.
And again, it doesn't make Star Wars bad. It just makes Star Wars different.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're at the end of this one. Bill, I hope it's really not that 70s show, but what are we discussing next week?
No. I have a reason. Before I get into that, though, I'd like to whore myself out, if you don't mind.
Since you're gonna ramble, everybody, Bill's movie is out. Werewolf Carl Place. Stay tuned after the credits for the trailer. But yeah, go check it out on his channel.
That's basically all I was going to say. Just thank you to all those who already checked it out and left pleasant comments. Please go out there, support the movie. I put a lot of work into it, and just want to get as many people to see it as possible. Hit the like button, leave a comment, just let me know what you think. Go check out the movie. It's on my channel.
I helped.
And Ian helped. Yes, he did. And so did Milan.
Yeah. Oh yes. One more thing. Also on the topic of Bill's movie, I'm doing an audio drama series based on Bill's main hero, William Stone, and so yes, I'm gonna whore myself out as well. This is Ian's the pimp and we're the horse, basically. So please go check out the first episode of Vurdelokra, it's a William Stone tale, an audio play based on Bill's movie. I hope you like it. It's the first episode is out, and yeah.
Yes, indeed. So go check out the movie and go check out Milan's audio drama. But enough whoring myself out. On to next week's review topic. Ian likes to complain to me about the fact that we don't review enough mainstream movies, and I completely agree. So, next week on Geeky Gentlemen, in honor of it being July and summer, and one thing being on everyone's mind, the beach and the stuff that lurks within the depths of the ocean, which the beach is connected to, we will be reviewing one of the most influential films in film history and pop culture history, Jaws.
Oh, sweet!
And I picked it because Jaws is a very important film to me around this time of year. Shark Week is like my Super Bowl, and it's just, Jaws is one of the most important movies in my life. It's important to me personally. We'll get all into that next week on Geeky Gentlemen when we sit down and we get into Jaws. So, that's all I have to say.
I freaking knew it. Like, the second you mentioned, it's a classic film, Jaws. I just knew it. It's Bill.
I
love Jaws.
Subtle.
Okay,
Oh,
okay. Well,
Yeah,
I'm incredibly excited. I think I might actually watch the sequels just to make fun of them.
Yes, yes. I was gonna say let's review the whole franchise, but there's a chance I might do a mini-series out of that, so I don't want to do it here.
Alright, anyway. So, everybody, thank you for listening. I know this video got to some weird places. I'm sorry about that. We try our best. That's a lie. But anyway, until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the fanatic.
And I am the madman.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Ciao, everyone.
William Stone Audio Files, Case 1, Entry 1. My hometown of Carl Place has never been one to fear. It has always been quiet and peaceful. And God, how I've hated it. There is no adventure here. No veil of mystery. Until now. 2 violent murders, both on consecutive nights, with nothing connecting the victims and no evidence as to the identity of the killer. All that is known is that the wounds are so savage in nature that it is doubtful they were caused by anything human. But Carl Place has no indigenous wildlife that is capable of inflicting such wounds, and there are no reports of missing dogs or escaped zoo animals who could be claimed. This leads one to the conclusion that neither a human or an animal could be responsible. Reasonable, but untrue. Because the only conclusion that truly makes any sense in this case, given these facts, is that it must have been both.